what's happening YouTube. So, after a really good winning streak, we unfortunately have our first loss in, I believe, in a 5 game winning streak, I want to say. I forgot exactly, but 7 game winning streak. Yeah, I think 7 game winning streak. But we unfortunately lost against the New York Knicks, a team that had a 7 game losing streak. So I guess the Knicks, they pretty much had all the energy towards their side, and the Clippers, like, it was just most definitely not our night. Um, we start off, we actually started off in the first quarter pretty solid. It was 22-25, pretty close game. And then second quarter is when everything spiraled out of control. Um, you got pretty much the Knicks. They had all the energy towards their side, like ever since the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Um, you got you got who could I say? You they pretty much just was making the shots. Alex Burks was switching threes. Fournier made some shots. Randall, he was not the most efficient, but they won. They essentially won the game. So now I'm gonna go player by player, like how I usually do my videos. So first of all, Reggie Jackson. It was most definitely not his night. He definitely cannot hit any shots. But Reggie Jackson, he's been like grinding it up, grinding for us. But unfortunately, it was just definitely not a good night at all whatsoever for Reggie Jackson. He was like 4 for 16. He was basically 0 for 8 from the 3 point line, that is nowhere near good at all. It's pretty much fairly abysmal, which is really unfortunate what happened to Mr. June. But as a fan, we always gonna support the players through ups and downs, especially when they're in the mud. We're gonna we're gonna do our best to show some love and support. So yeah, he went over 8, that was definitely not good at all. Big Zubac, it was like now all the slander of Vika Zubac, now it's gonna come back. It's just gonna start arriving once again. Like Zubac he only had like 4 points. Um, Players like RG Barrett was taking advantage of him, just going to the paint, getting some shots. Jericho Sims was just having all the energy and all that. Mitchell Robinson, was being that really big, athletic big he is, he kind of, outperforms Zubac, but you can't really like have all good nights. But Zubac, it was just definitely pretty rough for Zubac. It was but one thing, the bright part about Zubac though is he made that one near 3 point line, which is pretty promising. Pretty promising. Like low key, Zubac could definitely develop to be a pretty solid 3 point shooter because his free throw shooting is pretty good. Um, they're pretty much like there are some moments when Zubac has no choice to shoot at threes, but he actually makes a decent amount of them. So who knows? Maybe Zubac could definitely try to expand his range. But it was most definitely not his night. Definitely not any Clippers night, honestly. And Marcus Morris, the guy he would usually drain some threes and do his post fadeaways, he definitely could not really make anything. He was missing all types of shots, missing really close shots as well too. Mid range was missing a lot of them too. Defense was just not his night, which is yeah, pretty rough to say the least. And then You got who else? Nick Batum. Like Nick Batum is a really interesting situation because like Batum has been pretty quiet for the last 3, 4. Honestly, low key past month. Like he's been like a little bit on a slump to be honest, because he went 2 for 10, couldn't really make much, but he gave it his all. Had his IQ, played defense and all that, but it was most definitely his off night. But we definitely still love the Batum Battalion, but it was he's been off lately. Like he's been like pretty off. Like yeah, he made some nice threes at times, but I don't really recall him having like more than like a actual solid, rock solid double digit like for the past 2 weeks. Like Nate Batum's been pretty off. Hopefully, he could definitely get his flow. He could definitely start making shots again, stepping up. But he does play pretty smart, and that's one solid thing about Nick Batum. But he's been pretty off. And then let's head to the bench. Um, I forgot Terrence Mann. Terrence Mann, shout out to him. He was one of those players who played pretty consistently good. He was always pretty on defense, hustle, shooting, 3-point shooting. He was essentially doing his thing. He's been doing pretty well. Nothing but good stuff for Terrence Mann. Now let's actually head to the bench. Roko. He was pretty much the best Clipper of tonight. He was swishing threes. He was playing tremendous defense. He was getting rebounds. He was just doing it all. He was essentially just doing it all, just doing like all the dirty work. He was just doing all the dirty work and bringing that hustle in him. Isaiah Heartstone, he did pretty solid. He managed to get some buckets. He was more playable than Zubac in this particular game because Hartenstein's more of a mobile type of big, and he could kind of match the energy when the Clippers do not have much energy, and when the other team has the energy on their side. So Hartenstein, um, nothing but solid for him. Amir Coffey, pretty solid for him as well too. He was he just has some pretty good IQ. He made some timely 3-pointers. Made some solid layups. Played solid defense. Just shows like a pretty good role player type of vibe. And then you got who else? Honestly, Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard being a pretty good shooter as usual. Unfortunately, he hasn't been an ultimate flamethrower, but he was still a pretty good shooter. But not like flamethrowing like dropping 18 points a game or having a really big highlight reel, but he was solid. He had like I believe 12 points. I forgot what was his stats, but it was fairly efficient. And then you pretty much essentially then who else? Like at this moment I cannot really remember too much, but necessarily it was a really rough night. It was just a really really rough night. And then when garbage time happened, you got Brandon Boston who was really solid, really shifty, um, getting to the free throw line. Like that is one thing that Tyronn Lue most definitely could have done is definitely get Brandon Boston Jr. in that game ASAP because this was the moment when we needed a really flashy, really good shot creator to play because like most of the Clippers players are strictly spot up 3-point shooting. Like only Reggie Jackson would be like an actual like really good shot creator that could do some good ball handling or all that. But Reggie Jackson, he did not play good whatsoever. So this was a perfect opportunity that Tyronn Lue should have definitely utilized Brandon Boston, because Brandon Boston, one thing he brings is energy. Another thing he brings is good flashiness. So he would have definitely put a lot of the Knicks players in a really good blender for sure, and definitely drain some shots. Like, yes, I know Brandon Boston Jr. is pretty inefficient, but like, if you actually see him play, you definitely know he's a really great player, and he could also bring some nice spark for our Clippers. So, like, oh yeah, it was a really low energy game for the Clippers essentially. But and one thing interesting about Brandon Boston Jr. It's a side note, but he had a really interesting effort to say the least. So, but yeah, definitely could have played Brandon Boston Jr. down the line. Even like throughout all the other games, Brandon Boston Jr. definitely should have got minutes, because, like, one, he's a really talented young player that definitely needs to get utilized. So, and two, like, sometimes things may not go perfectly all the time, so you just want to try something a little bit different, you know what I'm saying? Like, especially when all the players were off, like, Brandon Boston should have been having some of the minutes at least. And Amir Coffey, nothing wrong with him playing. He just does all around good stuff. But Brandon Boston Jr., he's just really, his game is really smooth. But at the same time, he brings the energy. He plays all. Don't forget, he also plays really good defense as well too. So not many reasons why you shouldn't play Brandon Boston Jr., but it's all good. We're most definitely should be okay, because it's just one loss in general. And let me try to talk about the Knicks a little bit. You got R.J. Barrett, who did pretty good for him, dropped 26 points. Pretty good for the Knicks. So pretty good shooter, pretty good slasher, doing all that. They were playing all types of players. They were playing Jericho Sims, who brought some energy. Fournier, who made some shots. Allie Burks, it was hard for him to miss. Randall, he had a really big off night. He only had, like, I forgot his stats, but I remember, like, in the first quarter, he went like 0 for 7. And then you got Deuce McBride, who plays actually, like, pretty good defense, not gonna lie. So he could pretty much read a promising future for the promising point guard for the Knicks. But yeah, that's all I gotta really much say. Good stuff to the New York Knicks. Just rough night for the Los Angeles Clippers. Hopefully down the line we could play better. Also, the big problem about the Clippers is definitely their turnovers, all that. And it was just, the energy was pretty low. Clippers kind of got a little, I guess, complacent by a nice winning streak, but it's all good. You cannot always be perfect all the time. You're always going to have some dark clouds. So, but yeah, just let me know what you think about this game. Be sure to leave a like and comment, subscribe. Especially leave a comment down below so I can chat with y'all in the comment section. And yeah, just have a great night, everybody.